Tonight, an extraordinary scenario floated by the president. Donald Trump now says that he is not ruling out putting American boots on the ground in Ukraine.
Your team has talked about security guarantees. Could that involve U.S. troops? Would you roll that out in the future?
We'll let you know that maybe later today. We're meeting with 7 great leaders of great countries also, and we'll be talking about that. They'll all be involved, but there'll be a lot of help. When it comes to security, there's going to be a lot of help. It's going to be good. They are first line of defense because they're there. They're Europe, but we're going to help them out also. We'll be involved.
That was during his meeting with Zelenskyy and European leaders, who all stressed the importance of guarantees for Ukraine's security. Now, Trump did not commit to anything in particular, right? Nothing specific, but it marks a significant shift for the president, who campaigned on America first and promised to keep U.S. forces out of foreign conflicts. And already those comments and the developments, which are still frankly happening as we are sitting here, are reverberating in MAGA world. So Zelenskyy has said that part of the security guarantees will be that they would be able to purchase $90 billion in U.S. weapons funded by Europe. Ukraine would sort of reciprocally manufacture drones, which the United States would purchase. I'm sure that's something that Donald Trump would like. But let me just play for you what Steve Bannon is saying about all of this today.
These same demons that are coming to the White House today, and they're demons. If you want Ukraine to be a European country and the Ukrainians want to be a European country, God bless you. Do it. We're not going to stand in the way. We're saying, hey, go with God. Go do it. But not with our money. And certainly not with our boys and girls. Germany, if you want 25,000 combat troops, I can give you where to send them right now. New York, Chicago, L.A., and then, hey, Baltimore, St. Louis, Detroit, boom. We got plenty of places we can send them.
So how's this going to fly, Joe, with MAGA world?
Look, Steve Bannon has an opinion. He shares it on his television and radio programs. Not everyone in MAGA has the same opinion. I personally am not going to Ukraine to fight. I do not want to see American troops in Ukraine to fight. But we have to be realistic about what do you think guarantees the security of peace in Ukraine. It's not mean tweets. It's not the endless sanctions. It's not another $100 billion. It is the threat that the U.S. military would use its force, perhaps not even boots on the ground. We have, planes and bombers and missiles and rockets and everything in between. But it's the guarantee of American sovereignty, and rather the projection of American sovereignty that would guarantee.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I agree with you that that's what would be needed to give the Ukrainians enough assurance to make a deal. The problem is that that's not a new idea, and the framework that's been discussed for a very long time is that European troops supported by American intelligence and American logistics. That's not a new idea. There's one really important reason why it hasn't happened. It's because Vladimir Putin would never agree to it. He will never agree to it. It's not a real thing because it can't be part of a peace deal because Putin won't agree to it because he wants to have control over Ukraine. And the whole reason he launched the war was to get at the root causes, which is NATO troops entering Ukraine. So it's a kabuki diplomacy where we pretend to have a security guarantee so Ukraine can pretend that they're okay with some sort of deal. And then it looks like Vladimir Putin's rejecting it so they can shift the blame to him. But it will never happen. And this is what's kind of bizarre about this whole exercise.
There is a weird lack of detail and a kind of shifting of the goalposts around what even security guarantee, what does that even mean?
But Republicans are just, on this issue, even my good friend Joe just put himself in a pretzel. Because if you would have asked him 6 months ago, or any Republican 6 months ago, about putting boots on the ground, you have Donald Trump talking about winning a Nobel Peace Prize. You know what's the antithesis to peace? Our boys and girls going and fighting in Ukraine. That's the antithesis to peace. And so, look, there are many people like myself who says continue giving the aid, $90 billion. $90 billion worth of aid. Give as much aid as necessary to Ukraine to make sure that they keep their sovereignty. But there is a hard and fast line among many Americans. Look, I know you guys want to put National Guardsmen in major cities. Hell, and they're in Washington, D.C. right now defending Lululemon. I hope you guys are proud of yourself.
Doing a great
right?
job.
Yeah, because the Lululemon's not burning down. Okay, whatever. So, but you're also saying that not only do you want them to defend the Lululemon at Union Station, but now you also want to put them on the ground in Ukraine. There's nothing that makes sense about traditional conservative values supporting this president and his foreign policy when it comes to the kabuki theater that we saw today.
Okay, I think one thing that you should keep in mind, though, Donald Trump in his negotiations could have floated this idea simply as a threat that he was making to Putin. So before we get too far down the road of actually sending troops.
What threat has Donald Trump made to Vladimir Putin? No, let me finish.
Okay.
What threat has he made to Vladimir Putin that he's followed through with? Name one.
Right.
Trump always
No. We got time before commercial. Name one.
We talked about it before the commercial. We talked about increasing Europe's participation when it came to defense spending to defend
How does that
Ukraine.
benefit?
That is a direct challenge to Putin because, as Josh just said, those are the countries that are on the front lines. And by the way, the United States, we should remember, has tens of thousands of troops already in Europe. Germany, Italy, the United Kingdom.
How many of them are at war?
They're not at war.
That's my point.
That's
We're taking them to
difference.
Donald Trump is not.
I don't think he's going to do it.
He's not going to do it.
He's not going to do it.
But
It's
if
a bluff.
he's not gonna
If it's a
do
bluff,
it-
it's a bluff. Everyone knows it's a bluff. Putin knows it's a bluff.
Then why say it?
Because it makes us get to the next
But not only why
meeting,
say it, because
and
now
it's
you
like
have Joe, my friend, having to defend it.
the
pretzel that's been spun
Joe and Steve
is that
Bannon in
if
a strange
the
position for
pretzel
no
that's been
reason over
spun
a thing that's
is
never
that
gonna
if
happen.
this
It's kinda crazy.
if this talk completely failed, if the meeting with Putin failed, the meeting with European leaders failed, we'd be, you guys be cheering. You have to give him some latitude to make some statements to increase American position in the negotiation.
Does he know what Josh said? Trump. Does
Well,
he
tell
know
him,
that
Josh.
Putin
Yeah.
that
Putin's not
Putin
gonna
would
do it.
not ever do it?
Doesn't seem
I
like
actually this is important because I am not
Isn't that
sure.
interesting?
I am not sure that Trump knows that
Exactly.
Putin is not interested
with
in
that.
actually doing
I agree
this.
with
He
that.
thinks Putin really wants peace, and
Right.
he's wrong.
Right.
And he's the president of the United States. That's a huge problem because all these European leaders have to pretend that he's not wrong, but we all know he's wrong. And that's the crazy conundrum that we're in. That's how we got into this
Trump
mess.
thinks,
It's
like he said,
Bizarre. And it's
Trump
really
said,
bad.
when I walk into the meeting, I'll know in 2 minutes if Putin and I are going to have a good meeting. And if we're not, I'm going to walk out. He thinks he is the KGB trained individual. He thinks he understands Putin, but he does not at all. Putin is continuing to play him and pushing him in directions that he doesn't believe
Chris,
in.
and
And
everybody
all
knows
the-
it. We all know it,
The other,
right?
it's
pretty clear.
Trump, and it's, okay, but let me also play, this is Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, who I think dispositionally is very much like Trump because they're coming from the business world, they're doing these negotiations, but here's how he described what was agreed to on Friday in Alaska.
We agreed to robust security guarantees that I would describe as game-changing. We got to an agreement that the United States and other European nations could effectively offer Article 5-like language to cover a security guarantee.
Those are some pretty bold claims. And I should just note, Marco Rubio, who has been around the block a time or two, was not like that.
No,
he did not say that, right?
Because Putin said right afterwards that that's not true, that he didn't agree to any NATO troops anywhere near Ukraine. And secondly, Steve Witkoff seems to think that the Russian Duma passing a law means something. And it doesn't, because it's a fake parliament and it's not real, and they've passed that law before and it didn't work the last time. So the fact that we have a president who believes Putin's promises, that he really likes him and they're really good friends and they're going to make a good deal, and then we have an envoy who doesn't understand that the Russian parliament is a rubber stamp parliament, doesn't mean anything when they do anything. That's bizarre. We're through the looking glass here, people, okay? We're having a negotiation based on a bunch of assumptions by the President of the United States that aren't true, and all the European leaders are pretending that they are true just to get through the meeting, okay? That's a really bad situation.
You know what does appear to be true?
That can't work.
Quick last
That's not going
word,
to work.
Christine, and then we
Is
gotta
that
go.
we seem to have given Putin a veto on who gets to join NATO. That does seem to be true, and that is incredibly dangerous, not just as it relates to Ukraine, but as it relates to our future as a civilized world.
All right, everybody. Josh Rogin, thank you very much for joining us. And next for us, Donald Trump is on the warpath tonight to kill mail-in voting. But would this hurt his party more than he thinks? We'll debate.